at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. With me, as always, Alan Medlock, a Medlock1. Coming to you Friday morning, July 31st. Alan, you and I are old enough to remember when this was the trade deadline day. We're also old enough to remember when it always went all the way to midnight. It fluctuates now. We're not there yet, but there's still a lot to be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite times of the year. It's been a little watered down the past few, I say maybe 4 to 5 years. You see some big transactions happen, but I think that there's a ton of information out now that A, has some weight, and B, there's a lot of smoke. But it's still a lot of fun, especially in the situation where the Cardinals are. I know there'll be some faction that are disappointed that they're probably more on the seller's market, but I don't think that was ever a change of what the plan was in the beginning. Stay the course, do your thing, and continue to grow, which means some of these expiring contracts or some of the guys that are within 2 to 3 years of control and free agency are going to be hot commodities right now. So it's actually fun to be on the Cardinal side of this because you're going to hear a lot of rumors. And I mean, as we record Friday, there was 2 news articles that came out and the Cardinals were headlighted in both. I do remember the midnight deadlines, though. It's funny you bring that up because I remember back, I know this is going to sound terrible, but pre-heavy internet days where you'd wake up that next morning and you would hear a lot of rumblings about stuff that had happened and some trades that happened well overnight when they were finalized. Just crazy stories that you kind of miss now that it's become so commercialized.
Yeah, I remember, of course, that was back when ESPN had Baseball Tonight and all that, and they'd be up, you'd stay up trying to watch those trades. And you don't, again, you don't get a lot of hug watch these days. I know a lot of, we still talk about hug watch and all that kind of stuff, but, with the deadline being before games start on whatever day it is this year, it's on August 3rd, on Monday, you don't have people getting pulled out of games right then. And there's just not much of it during the week, right? I mean, they don't make trades during games a lot of times. It seems like all that gets done before a game. So, I mean, it still happens some. We got to see a little bit of hugging this week with Dustin May as they, it's pretty clear that he is going to leave, but he was not actually traded in the middle of his start, which would have been interesting, no doubt. So yeah, and again, it's all different because you have so many playoff spots, which means so many mediocre teams can think that they're in it. And that has been a problem for the Cardinals in the past. Not as much, a couple of years they've, I guess 2 years ago, they kind of bought when they were hanging around the fringes. The 23 and 25, it was pretty clear, and they sold off. And I think this year might be a little bit more unique. I mean, again, this is the first time Chaim Bloom is going through this, and his approach to the trade deadline is probably going to be very different, but somewhat different than John Mozeliak's. Yes, you sell away off those expiring contracts, but I think he might be more open to moving players with some control if he's getting back something that helps build the next good Cardinal team.
Sure, they're in a unique position, and I'm going to give them a lot of credit, and I'm honestly going to give Mo a lot of credit for this, to where they're in a spot now to where they have a couple of commodities that people may want to overpay for, not necessarily they may overpay just out of sheer necessity to think that you can get in right now, in any playoff matchups. That's kind of how I feel about Newbar. I think that you could, potentially not necessarily high, but he's played a lot this year, and when coming back, he's almost been an everyday guy after the first half of the season, and some of the outlying numbers say that it could be there. If someone wants to overpay for that, which could possibly happen, or any pay maybe overpay for that, that's one you can move on from. You have the Staniks, you have your Mays, you have a bunch of those guys, but they position themselves now to where I don't necessarily think you're going to get in the lottery ticket. I think that they feel like they're going to get a guy that now may contribute in a competitive window, being late 27 or 28. All this comes with a caveat of the work of a potential work stoppage, but we don't have to go into that route. But I think that now they're in a spot to where it's like, okay, what they get may be guys that we see sooner rather than later, if not on the major league roster this year.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, depending on who you're trading. I mean, a Ryan Stanek, you're still probably getting,
Sure,
some player that you,
and that's the bullpen period,
right, right.
So yeah.
But yeah, I think that, again, some of these guys you can hold on to. Dustin May, obviously, I think they're going to trade him. Obviously, that seems to be the plan. And given the fact that Quinn Mathews is supposed to make his major league debut tomorrow, it feels like some trade is going to happen between when we release this, or maybe even before we release this, and the start of play tomorrow, just to give him a spot on the 40-man roster. But I think Dustin May is also in a spot where he's really enjoyed where he's been. And if the Cardinals don't get the deal that they want, he does have a mutual option, and very rarely is a mutual option picked up, right? I mean, that just doesn't happen, because if you're good enough, if the team wants it, the player wants to go in free agency and vice versa. But this might be the rare situation where the price is good for the Cardinals, the opportunity is good for the Cardinals, and Dustin May has appreciated his time in St. Louis and the fact that they've kept him healthy, that, they might exercise it. So I think that I still think Dustin May is going to get traded. I don't want to be clear about it. But I think also that Mo doesn't have to, or Mo, oh man, we're just deep reflexes there. Heim does not have to say, okay, I'll take this package even though I don't like it, because at least it gives me something. I think that he can hold out for something that's in the parameters of what he wants. And if he doesn't get it, then there's still the option of Dustin May being a part of your team next year.
Agreed. And it's a situation too that kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying, that they have the chance to now be pretty selective and can sell high and come out as winners on this, just because of the unique position they put themselves in. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week a little bit too, is the biggest failure of this deadline if they hold tight and don't move anybody, or move everybody that is in an expiring contract and not necessarily get the right return, which we won't know for years. That's kind of why I feel it's the May situation is weird, because I would personally like to bring him back. I mean, I know it's volatile. This is kind of his career. We've seen it everywhere, that he can be really good and then really dicey. But it's also that may be the veteran arm that they have and need in the rotation next year, if they have to bring in a couple of, or if they promote a couple of the young guys to start and into the rotation, kind of like they've done this year. So I expect to see him moved. I'm kind of like you. I felt like the writing was on the wall after the move after 5 innings of, hey, You've pitched. We're in this. The results aren't necessarily that important to us right now, but we do need to get you healthy and make sure that we've met whatever asking price or whatever. I'm sure that it's probably close to finalized now with all the news that we figured out about who's starting this weekend too. So yeah, I do kind of wonder how much of would this be a disappointing deadline. I don't think it's going to happen if we don't see a lot of Cardinal movement.
Yeah, I think it would be a little bit. You definitely don't want to stand pat with this team, because it's not a team that's worth standing pat on. So
and you brought in pieces with the mindset of, hey, we could either be knocking on the door, and I say knocking on the door is in 3 to 4 games up and pretty safe in the playoff spot, or bring these guys in to keep you competitive. If not, turn it into another piece or multiple pieces for the minor league system. I thought that's what was advertised in anyway.
Yeah, it is funny, and I noticed Dustin May referencing this in his comments after the pitching on this week, that he said something to the effect of, he's the veteran, but he's still the young guy too, right? I mean, he only turns 29 like next month. He's still pretty young in baseball terms, and so I think that's one of those, again, if they don't get their deal, if they can come to terms, or if they trade him off with the idea that they'll re-sign him, for a couple of years in this winter. He's the kind of guy that you would hope would wind up being like a number 3 or something on your team as these young pitchers develop, but still be that kind of steady hand.
Sure.
So yeah, I think the Dustin May experiment hasn't been perfect, but it's been pretty much what the Cardinals hoped for. And to see games like this week, or like the one hitter that he threw, or some of these other games that we have seen him pitch pretty well. I mean, there were a couple blow-ups, obviously, but overall, he showed that he was that kind of pitcher that was highly touted coming up. And I'm very interested to see, one, who trades for him, and two, how his career pans out. But I think coming to the Cardinals has probably changed his career trajectory for the better.
Yeah. That's well put. I mean, because it's one of those, you almost want the career path to make the Dodgers, regret that they moved him out. One of those situations. We don't know what went behind closed doors, but you hope the best for him. And it's, it is funny. To me, it seems like he's been around so long, because I remember when he pitched opening day here in Tulsa. And and that was years ago.
Yeah.
And time flies, but he seems like a good dude, and you hope the best for him. And I am curious to see who a lot of the players get linked to as well. And it's and that adds to the intrigue of this weekend and through Monday.
Yeah, there are some interesting pieces. So you mentioned Lars Newbar. Lars had a rough game yesterday, to the point that you almost hope it wasn't his last game as a Cardinal, or at least not a Cardinal in Busch Stadium, because you hate to go out on that note. But we'll just kind of go. We'll start with him. What do you think? Do you think they actually move him, or do you think he stays?
Oh man, this is gonna hopefully. It's not like he listens to this, but I hope they trade him. And it's a player that I really like. But I do think that's the one right now that I think that you can get a fairly decent return on. I know that they're probably not going to promote Baez quick. I think there's probably a lot to, like, there's going to be seasoning in AAA on that, just not to rush them into it. And there's a lot of 40-man implications right now as far as the big league roster goes, and how it's going to be handled in any potential work stoppage too. I mean, that's the reality that we're in, I think. I don't think the everyday play makes that big a difference to him right now. I mean, I think that you could have Velasquez play a lot, which I've kind of wondered if that hasn't played out, but that's just me at this point. I hope that he gets moved. I'm not certain that he does get moved, though, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think that trading him does open a spot for Baez if they want to. Although you're right, although Baez has 32 home runs in Memphis, there's still some questions. That being said, they may be willing to see if he can't figure those things out at the major leagues level. Now we'll see. I
agree.
I'm kind of with you. I kind of feel like they want to. I mean, that could get exploited real quick, and you wonder. I mean, it's kind of like Gastelum, right? Has come up here and hasn't shown the abilities that we've seen in the minor leagues, because people are figuring things out, and hopefully that adjusts and change. It's just been, he comes in and I'm like, when's the home run coming? Is that really? And he's done a lot of that, unfortunately. So I don't know, but that would at least free that spot up. if you wanted to go that way. I also think there's a lot to be made that, Newbar has great underlying metrics, but hasn't ever translated them. And will they ever translate? I think there's a gamble
Yeah.
there. My bet is, though, they don't trade him. I've heard, there's a lot of arguments that that's a better trade in the offseason. There is something, as you point out, to this 40-man deal, because anybody you put on the 40-man, if there is a lockout, you can't work with. But if they're not, if they're still in the minor leagues, they're free game to, they can come to the complex, that kind of stuff. So if you think you're going to want to continue to work on with somebody off this summer, or however long the lockout goes this winter, then maybe you're hesitant to put them on the 40-man. So I don't know that Baez fits that profile or not, but I feel like it's more likely than not that Newt stays, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe there is that market there that I don't know about.
Yeah, that's the bigger question. I think that may be just a lot of the smoke situation and not a lot of fire behind it. I think they like him in the lineup every day. I would like to know, and we met. I mean, the proof will be in the pudding, essentially. So we won't know for at least another year or so. The players they feel like are part of the competitive window, and it's one of those. I think that you could have an extremely easy argument. Well, one, that you've got your Walker, your Weatherholts for certain, that you feel like you have a good idea on Wynn. I think you have a good idea on Herrera. Now, if you're blown away on Herrera, I think that's probably they're going to have to weigh out what Herrera is going to be. That's are you going to have a young lifelong DH? Because I do kind of wonder. Now, are they messaging how they will play him for his career, catch him a couple times, but hit him every day? I'm curious to see how that plays, especially if you have, your two better player, the two catchers of the future in the minor leagues right now. You would assume. So yeah, I don't know, that one will be interesting. But I do kind of wonder the guys that they feel are part of the next wave, which if you truth serum them, I think will probably be 28.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, they probably, there were advancements this year that they might not have expected. I don't know that they always expect to sell at the deadline. I don't think they expected to fall under 500 the week of, for the first time. This has been a step ahead of things, but it's also
Agreed. I completely agree.
How much of that is sustainable, right? I mean, most of it should be. But you also wouldn't be too surprised if they took a little bit of a step back next year. I mean, you're not going to have Jordan Walker just going out of his mind. He's going to be better. He's going to be the player, but he may be more consistent. But he's also, they had a stretch there where he was just, Mark McGwire. It probably didn't happen this year, but JJ Weatherholt's better, hopefully. You may not have, some things. You just don't know. I mean, it wouldn't be surprised if you have a step back, especially if if you're starting Joshua Baez next year and he's kind of adjusting to the league. Who knows? But so yeah, I mean, 28 makes sense to me. I think maybe they could put something together for 27 and be on kind of like this year. But I would think that they at least wouldn't be sellers at the 27 deadline. Maybe they could be holding pat or whatever. But the 28 does make sense, and you're right, trying to figure out who's going to be part of that group. There's so many good minor leaguers that are coming up and making such impressions in the minors that you would like to, some of those guys are going to be part of this, which means some of the guys we think might be are going to have to be pushed off. And maybe that brings us to that catching situation. You mentioned, they probably don't sell Herrera unless it's just a well overpay, and it'd have to be quite a bit to get a guy like that. The article today by Katie Wu says the Cardinals really like Pedro Pages as your backup guy, which I think that makes sense. I also I really can't imagine anybody trading for Pedro Pages.
A huge market. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
here's what's crazy. Not to cut into your point.
No, go ahead.
Pages is the perfect. No matter what the administration has been, and no matter what the dugout situation's been as far as managers and coaches, Paez is just the perfect Cardinal cutout of the backup that everybody loves because he's a catch and throw guy, and you know what I mean, and is lacking. Think about it. We've seen we could probably name 10 off the top of our head, but go ahead. I mean, because I like Paez for that same reason. So, but also agree with you. I think the Cardinals like him a hell of a lot more than the baseball industry does.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it's a relatively common opinion around there, how many people trade very much for a backup catcher, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's not going to start for any. I don't think even though there are people out there looking for catching, I don't think that they would go for Paez just because he is, like I said, he's a really good backup catcher. But you don't necessarily want him starting every day, which means there's Jimmy Crooks. And, it sounds like the Cardinals, if they were going to trade a catcher, which is not a guarantee at all, are more likely to listen on Jimmy Crooks. And I think, you got the two guys in the majors now. I mean, if you're going to continue to keep, it doesn't feel like they're catching Crooks very often. Anyway, you're catching Herrera twice a week. You're catching Pages, it feels like three times a week. Crooks doesn't give too many starts, and then you've got Bernal and Rodriguez coming up, which are going to be here. Bernal could be here as early as next year, right? I mean, he's a AAA. Rodriguez is probably another year or so away, but he's just tearing up AA at 19, which is insane. So sooner rather than later, you got to get rid of somebody, and it just feels like Jimmy Crooks is that guy. He kind of feels like Carson Kelly when Carson Kelly was here, right? Because it was Yachty was catching all the time, and then you had, I don't remember if you even had another catcher at that time, but Carson was too good to be the backup catcher. And then you had people like Kisner, who had a high profile coming up behind.
Yeah.
And, he was expendable. He went off in the trade for Goldschmidt. It feels like Crooks is that kind of thing, where Crooks is probably going to be, I think it'd be interesting to see if the Cardinals pulled like some big deal. And Crooks was part of a deal with Dustin May and who knows who else, or just those two, whatever, and bringing in something of higher quality because you're trading off not only a rental piece in May, but something that could be with your team for a while in Crooks.
Well, that's a great call, and that's kind of what I thought would happen. Honestly, not necessarily the May Crooks, but I did wonder if he would be a bigger part of the deal, just because I don't know what kind of value you have, even with these guys that are desperate for a catcher at this point. I understand the Langoliers injury and stuff like that kind of adjust things, but I mean, how far down the list are you going to hear Crooks' name of somebody that's that he's going to come in and be somebody's backup, essentially what it is. But that's a great point about the potential of a May plus to bring somebody in, because that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Of they've positioned themselves to where you're not necessarily going just to get the Class A lottery ticket at this point. I mean, what the guys they may bring in could be dudes that we see contribute, in the next year or two, and that's somewhat exciting. But you're right. I feel like that's the Herrera to me is, I wouldn't say untouchable, but that would have to take a high return. Mm-hmm. And then Pages just feels like a Cardinal guy without a market, and that kind of signals out Crooks, who I like, but hadn't necessarily blown you away either.
Right. And Herrera also feels like one of those trades that if you're going to make it, you probably make it in the winter, when everybody's available, because when you've had a chance to really evaluate whether he's going to be a catcher, whether he's going to do it with you, people might be willing to pay a little differently, and you've got a broader market.
You're exactly right. Sorry to cut you off again, but you have probably a pretty good idea of Bernal and Rodriguez about when they're coming. Right. After a full season.
Yeah, if you think Rodriguez, Bernal's got to be there this year, then you decide, okay, do we want Herrera to DH or do we move him? And I think they'd be perfectly fine with him DHing. I don't expect them to move him anytime soon.
Yeah. Can I bring something up on the deadline real quick?
Yeah.
I brought up, Weatherholt, Walker, Wynn, Herrera. I am a huge Burleson fan, and I feel like that's a guy that could stick around and be a Cardinal for a long time and will always contribute. I know there is a faction that would be more than willing to deal him. Do you think the more than willing to deal Burleson comes from the fact that they naturally think Herrera can play first base?
I would say that would probably play a part, although we
Okay.
haven't seen him play a lot of that. I
No,
think
agreed.
I think part of the idea of dealing Burleson is just it feels like you can find a Burleson if you need to. And that may be wrong. I mean, but first base is one of those places where you could put another prospect. You could put a Herrera. You could put a. Well, you probably wouldn't put a Rodriguez. He's kind of small. But you could put somebody there if you could maybe even to Joshua Baez, right? Maybe if that's the situation. I mean I don't know. First base is incredibly hard, as Ron Washington tells us, and so
Well,
shifting people over there is not as
I
easy. But I mean it's
well,
possible.
well, my point is I think that it's easy to say that he's easy to replace, but man, he can hit.
Yeah, yeah,
And not necessarily 35 homers that is historical with the first baseman, but I don't know. I mean, I'm really high on him. I think he's really, really good defensively as well. I don't know. I mean, that's to me that is the perfect situation of a piece that you have to have him to be a winning team. Not necessarily the first baseman, not necessarily the bat, the combination of the two and what he means to people. And that's I don't know. That's I think, and I understand where the Cardinals are. And I'm going to trust the organization, and I feel like we kind of lost that trust after a few years. But I don't know. I feel like that would be a mistake. I think that there's a lot of teams that would want Burleson and would probably laugh in your face if you made the trade.
I don't think he's high on their let's trade this guy list.
Agreed.
And I do think there's a lot of people that appreciate what he's doing. But I'm also not surprised that the name comes up because he's a good hitter, and it does feel like there's something you could replace there. And again, it wouldn't be one of those let's just get rid of him type of situations. It would definitely be this is a really intriguing piece. And so, because I mean that's the kind of guy that would bring you back something of good Nate value because he's under control, because he's a good hitter. He's working. He's improved a little bit lately over hitting lefties. All of that to be said. I would be really surprised if that's the way they win.
Yeah, agreed. And I kind of hope that's the way they do not go. You know what I mean? I think that I feel like Burleson's one of the five that position players that you could that I feel like that would be part of the next window. My bad. Yeah, go ahead.
Man, y'all are really against trading.
Yeah, she didn't agree with she did not agree with my point. So there we have it. Now my question to you: who's the more likely trade candidate? And this is going to go in the weeds. And I know we were talking about Herrera, and I know we were talking about position changes, but who is the more likely trade candidate? Okay. Who is the more likely to be a Cardinal in 4 seasons? Burleson or Wynn?
I think it's Wynn. I mean, if you had to make me pick one. Because, I mean, Wynn plays a premium position. I know there's been a lot of talk about his offense of late. I also think if you look at the last few months, it's been pretty close to league average. And he's had some decent. I'm not concerned about it. I think it's going to continue to develop, and even if it's average with that glove, it's good. So I think Wynn's one of those ones that they would. I think Wynn is a guy that they would extend, or at least play. I think Burleson is a guy that if you get to the end, I think that's the kind of guy that they go year to year with. They go to arbitration, and then I don't know how well he holds up after 6 years, after assuming that CBA doesn't change anything. But, after you've had 3 years of arbitration and all that, and the 3 years that you have of control, and I'd have to see where he's at. He didn't have arbitration this year, right? So you're looking at 4 years. It's probably about the time he's become a free agent. I think that they would say we can replace Burleson easier than we can replace Wynn.
Yeah, is Wynn happy right now?
I read, I think there's some art, I read Jeff Jones's comments or read Jeff Jones's words about birds, which if you're not subscribed over there, you probably should be because it's really good
Yeah.
stuff. And he has that comment of Wynn knows the business.
Yes.
He knew that, hey, we can win the rest of the way out and Heim's going to trade players. I did not get the fact that he had rancor on that. It was just a matter of fact. It was like,
Well,
this is the way the game is. And so I think he's still content with the organization, but he also may be one that is going to, when it comes to, extensions or arbitration or something, he's willing to play a little bit of hardball.
Well, I agree with that. I will say this. I thought the article and those comments coming off the heels of what Lance Lynn said were very intriguing.
Okay, now I didn't hear what Lance Lynn said.
Yeah, so. Well, Lynn pointed to the fact that, yes, Wynn is unhappy because of what happened with Weatherholt and how, hey, I was here for this extension too. Mm. And I thought, well, that's somebody that his finger's on the pulse quite a bit. And I was like, oh, that's a little troublesome, and I was thinking, well, but I don't blame Wynn for playing hardball either. We don't necessarily know if he may have been offered that last year and said no. I'm not so certain. I do kind of wonder if there's going to be an extension in the off season, if it is going to be a Wynn or a Burleson. I've thought about that, buying some of it out. I not to put those two head to head. See, here's my thing. Whenever I watch a Nico Horner, who is really hard to strike out, is a very serviceable offensive player and a darn good defensive player, I wonder if that peak, if a Horner baseline for Wynn as a shortstop is just, to me, that's gold.
Sure.
It's one of those to where you're thinking, I pay so highly on up the middle defense that I would be a poor general manager. Because to me, I'm like, hey, I'm going to build my offense from the corners. I'm going to make sure they catch it up the middle. And that's that may be an antiquated way to look at things, but I think that he saves you enough runs to overcome any deficiency he may potentially have as a hitter. Which, that was the same thing we said about Ozzie Smith. I'm not saying that he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but sometimes things can happen, and I would be willing to pay for that.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked. Again, you hate to compare a guy like Wynn to a guy like Ozzie Smith.
Sure, completely unfair. I mean, like, that's Walker to Pujols. You're just like, well, you're asking for trouble in this,
right? But I mean, you do look at Ozzie's early years. And some of his WRC plus looks a lot like Wynn's WRC plus right now. And then, Ozzie built it up to, average to above average. And in fact, was runner up and should have won the MVP in '87. Granted, different era, but WRC plus adjusts for that. So I think that that's very possible that bat's going to come around. He's never going to be a Cal Ripken or anything like that, but I think he can more than hold his own. And I hope he's doing that in St. Louis. I mean, because we've seen the defense is there. I mean, we saw those kind of plays this week that it's like it's which has brought up the comments of like that Tony La Russa had for Yadier Molina. Even if he doesn't hit a single thing all year, he's worth it because of the defense.
Agreed.
And Wynn's pretty close to that.
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, that's like if we're pie in the sky here, I mean, and throwing out stupid scenarios, boy, an infield for the next 10 years of Burleson, Weatherholt, Wynn, and Holiday would be really nice. I saw that and I was like, I know this is dumb, and this is just, I mean, the Oklahoma kid in me, I was like, that would be awesome. I'm not going to get in the weeds on this. I think that those are things that are just fun to talk about this time of year, but not a lot of traction on it.
I agree. I absolutely agree. However, it was very interesting for me to see on, I think it was the Athletics, big board. Their top 50 players that could get traded. I mean, and granted, they rated the deals by green yellow or red, which red was
Yes.
pretty much not likely to happen. But Jackson Holiday was on that list. It was a red.
Yeah.
He was one that did it, and mainly just because probably been brought up in that Jeff Passan podcast or whatever. But you wonder. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't. It's not likely. It's not. It's almost impossible.
But you're already. I mean, I would be absolutely fired up.
I mean, and the problem is, Oakland or the Orioles don't really need young catching. They've got, they had a little bit of a because of injuries right now. They need somebody today. That's why Yoel Pozo wound over there. But they don't need a Jimmy Crooks. So how do you make that work? I don't know. But it would be a lot of fun. But I don't see how that happens.
I mean that's. Yeah, you're going to have to move out a substantial piece on that. I mean, Holiday's young, and the fact that I don't know, and I hear a lot of people on the not national side, but just a lot of columnists that are closer to the Orioles. That I mean, I think there's some disappointment, but I'm like, he's young. I mean, he was up a year out of high school.
Yeah. But, so, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, we expect, because we have seen a few, and because there's so much invested in these guys, we expect them to come up and just light the world on fire and then continue to get better, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder, J.J. Weatherholt had a great year, for sure. But and he's going to, I think he's going to be Rookie of the Year. But it's also not a year of, wow, that guy is just amazing, right? I mean, he's had great moments. He said it's been a lot of fun to watch, but it's not a hitting 300 with 25 homers, which is probably what they expected out of Jackson Holiday by now.
Yeah, well, 100% true. I think there's some frustration that the young group didn't take off in Baltimore, because I've heard the exact same thing about Rutschman too.
Yeah.
And you just wonder if their patience isn't as long. And you know what? They're in the AL East and they're competing with Washington. So it may be a different animal than that we're used to, even considering that Kansas City was decent a few years ago and they're in their situation too. And then we have the overriding, opinion of the Cubs and Brewers. I mean, I don't know how similar the situations are, but I do feel like there's more knee jerk when things are going south with those East teams. I think some of it's egg in the face what the Rays continue to do.
Maybe so. It does feel like, though, that the Cardinals are going to have to figure out third base and center field. And especially third base, there's not a real clear option in the minor leagues. They've got some outfielders, they've got some catchers, they've even got some middle infield people, but finding a third baseman right now, unless you're going to shift somebody over, which is always a possibility, that's a difficult thing. Because it doesn't, Blaze Jordan was a nice story, but it doesn't feel like that he's definitely a long-term solution. Nolan Gorman is hitting a little bit more at Memphis lately, but I still don't know that, anybody trusts him to be that kind of guy. If anybody trusts him to be that kind of guy, the Cardinals would like to trade him to him.
That's what I was going to say. I do kind of wonder where the trade, a change of scenery candidate's not Gorman this trade deadline, but I'm skeptical, but would not be surprised.
Yeah. So it would be very interesting if the Cardinals spent some of this capital, like a Dustin May or Jimmy Crooks or whoever, to get a third base prospect that was highly rated and that might not take over this year, but be ready to go sometime next year. I think it's going to be, they're always probably going to be targeting pitching because that's what they do. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see if they target something like third base or center field because, Victor Scott isn't hitting in Memphis. Nathan Church isn't hitting in St. Louis.
Yeah.
The defense is there for the most part. Especially if you do trade Lars Newbar. Lars has played some. They're playing Jose Fermin in center field.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's you can't have Fermin at third and short or third and center. You know what I mean? And I think that's what they would want to do right now, and that probably says a lot about where they are. That if one thing that they figured out this year is that they've got to upgrade quick at those positions.
Yeah, Fermin is great, as a utility guy that can play
Yeah.
these positions. You just don't necessarily want him starting those positions very regularly, and he is. He has been playing them pretty much. I'd have to look, but it feels like just about every 4 or 5 times a week he's starting at
Yeah.
least one of those spots.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think he would be I think he's the preferred guy to play third at this point. I think they like Church defensively, but you're right, he can't hit. I mean, his dry spells are really, really dry. But the relief is for me in center, and Jordan back to third. I mean, Velasquez is the one that doesn't get a lot of run to me,
yeah.
and I'm not so certain he deserves it. And I know that sounds terrible, but that's one that'll be a 40-man spot clear, sooner rather than later. I mean, do you feel that way if anybody's coming up? Well, depending on if you trade Newbar, I mean that's
Yeah. All that's open. I do say they do like to use him in the when they use the all right-handed lineup against
yeah, it's
lefties.
true.
And he's had a few spots. I'd have to look up. Nothing stands out at the top of my head right now of big moments for him. You're right, but they've pinch hit with him. So I don't know that I would say that, but I also don't know. I mean, they've got to clear a 40-man roster spot, and they've got to clear a 26-man roster spot for Quinn Mathews. And I don't know. Again, I expect a trade will take care of that. I mean, I almost expected Dustin May to be traded yesterday.
Yeah,
it feels
just
to
how
me
it was handled.
Yeah,
it
feels to me like they've got a deal pretty much in hand, that they may be just waiting on some last minute things or something.
That's exactly what I thought. More so, I was like, I think they know the team that he's going to right now. I think that there's probably some fact gathering on both sides that are going on, but I think that may be determined. Just waiting to see when they're going to announce it.
Yeah, and I mean, Matt Svenson's struggled a lot this year, so he could go down to free a 26-man if it's not a trade. But like I said, you got to figure out that 40-man spot. Yeah. Which leads me to the question. I don't know that I've seen this answered online yet. Did Dustin May go with the team to Toronto?
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to ask that. I was literally about to ask the same thing. I said, is he even in Toronto with them right now? I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen it.
I mean, it's one thing if he goes to Kansas City or even Los Angeles or something like that. It just feels like, why go through the hassle of getting a guy through to another country?
Yeah,
if he's going to have to turn right around the next day and come right back in, unless they're trading him to Toronto, and then that would be helpful, I guess. But being how Toronto's selling probably more than buying, so I don't know. I just thought that was I'm sure he probably does. I think they just probably have to. It's kind of like Lars Nootbaar packing for a full trip, even though he could be traded. That kind of mindset. But you're with this team until you're not. But I mean, look, it's Dustin May is not going to pitch in that series one way or the other. You're not going to pitch him in the bullpen role. Even if he stays with your team, especially with Mathews, even without Mathews, but it pushed him off of the Monday start, so he's not pitching until Tuesday for the Cardinals if he stays in St. Louis. I think there's a lot of reasons to say, hey, you just sit this one out. There's no reason for you to make this trip. One way or another, well, you're going to be here in the States. So I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, that's. I literally thought the same thing. Whenever we were breaking that down, I was looking at the 40-man. I was like, I wonder if he even went to Toronto with them, because it seems like it'd be a bigger pain in the butt than not. Just if he's moving out,
right. So we haven't really touched on the guys in the bullpen. Then Stanek feels like a pretty obvious one. He's pitched well enough to get you some prospect back, I think, at the deadline. Riley O'Brien, what do you think? I mean, do they keep him? Do they try to sell a little high on him?
Oh man, I would like to see a high sell, personally. But yeah, I mean, that's the only way I would move him, really. The um uh I gosh, I don't know. My gut says that he's not going to be dealt, but my heart kind of wants it to happen. Because I think that you can get a pretty good return, and you have guys up right now, even with Romero out, which I wonder how much that hurt his market. But I feel like they have a lot of trust in Soriano anyway, and I do kind of wonder if there's anybody that they could bring up and give a shot. I mean, here's my thing. It's a name that 2 years ago this would have been the hot button, but now you don't because of the injury issue. But when will we ever see, or will we ever see Hintz in the big leagues?
Who?
Tink Hintz.
Tink Hintz?
Yeah.
I don't think we ever do.
Okay.
Honestly, I think the clock's running out on Tink, and I would be surprised if he ever makes it to the big leagues. If he does, it's good as a reliever, but he's had those kind of struggles. He's not at a spot where he's ready to come up this year. And we'll be at 7 years next year than after he's been drafted. He came in that 2020 draft.
Yeah.
I would be really surprised.
See, I wondered if that wouldn't be some kind of a move, or your Arkansas guy, if Jerpy comes up, because I think that's a move that happens before too long, and that kind of lead. I would like to see those guys rather than Green at this point. Just or O'Brien, not Green. O'Brien at this point, because one, I mean, they are what they are, and you can kind of figure some stuff out and sell high on a closer who doesn't necessarily have to go be a closer somewhere, but has shown that he's effective in the bullpen.
Yeah, Dane Perry on his Substack made a pretty good point about keeping Riley O'Brien, about how well he's got the talents and stuff to stick around, and you've still got him under control. And if they keep him, that's obviously not a big deal.
Sure.
I just know how relievers tend to be, at least with
Agreed.
That's
exactly how I feel.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this 2 years ago with Ryan Helsley. In 2024, the year before they traded him, we said, hey, we should, the Cardinals, that was the year they thought they were kind of in it. They really weren't. And said they shouldn't be buying. They should be selling Helsley with a year of plus of control and, really getting something back. And instead, they held him for another year, and then that next year was a struggle, right? I mean, he pitched well enough that they got some good quality back, and then he went and blew up in New York. But I mean, relievers are just that way, and so to me, it's like the Cardinals don't plan to contend this year. Obviously, they're selling, and they're probably not going to contend next year. And even if they do, we don't know what kind of Riley O'Brien you're going to get. If somebody comes to you with a good deal, again, not just a, hey, let's sell them for a single A prospect, but if somebody comes to you with a reasonable deal, I think you have to move him.
I completely agree. I mean, and it's a win-win on both sides. That whether you keep and there's some potential, or you trade and you get the piece back, because if someone wants him that bad right now, you may get a piece that can contribute pretty quickly.
So here we are, again, we've gone almost our hour and haven't even talked about what happened on the field this week. And I think that's probably for the best, because it was pretty miserable except for that rally against the Cubs. If the Cardinals are selling off, especially if they sell out of that bullpen, which we're not 100% sure how they're going to replace it, what do you think these next couple of months are going to be like?
My optimistic view, which may be the wrong way to buy into this, I think that some of the younger players, being your Weatherholts, your Walkers, get out of a fog a little bit, because I think that right now, I think that they're really struggling with the energy side of this, and just the fact that bodies aren't used to playing a full season, and you add in the home run derby on Walker and what he's done all year. All that being said, I think they kind of come out of the fog of this and maybe play a little better than a 500 team. That's my optimistic view. I do, and I thought about this after we got off the show last week of, what does a successful 2026 look like to you? Is it They've played well. The summer's been fun. They've identified some weaknesses, and they played some guys that we didn't expect to play. Maybe a Baez. We're going to see a Mathews. Maybe we'll see a Jerpy. Some guys that we've heard about for years that were knocking on the door now could potentially be a contributor for the rest of the season. Those would be wins to me. I think that they're really fatigued. I'm hoping, like I said, that and optimistically think that they'll get out of it a little bit. But to me, go in, win some series you're not supposed to, lose some series that you probably shouldn't lose, and answer some of these questions to where you could really be optimistic about 27 without the cloud of the work stoppage, which I even hate bringing up, but I just get the strong feeling it's going to happen. Yeah. But that's kind of what I think that we're going to see the rest of the year. I think that you're going to see some 5-inning starts. I think that you're going to see maybe pushing some guys to see if they're long term. I mean, I'm curious to see how they handle Liberatore the rest of the way. There's still some intrigue to me to watch every night. I'm a baseball lifer. I'm going to watch them anyway. But the team now, I trust the organization. I'm excited by the young players. I still get frustrated by the losses, but now I think we're starting to see what they could truly become.
Yeah, I think you're right. I look at the schedule for the next 2 months. It's not pleasant. Honestly, I mean,
this road trip's going to be tough.
Going to Toronto, even though they're struggling, and then they go to New York and play the Yankees. They haven't played the Phillies at all this year, so they've got 6 games with them in a couple weeks. They've got another step. They got the last run to Wrigley. Then they got another trip out to LA to play the Dodgers, and then the Rockies. They've got the White Sox coming to town. The end with the Brewers. 6 with the Giants, which you just, back and forth. I mean, there's the beginning of September, you go to LA, Colorado, and San Francisco. So that's always tough, especially in September. So who knows what the wins and losses are going to be. But yeah, I think there will be some intrigue. I mean, you're going to have, they're not bringing up Quinn Mathews to make one start. He's going to be there the rest of the way. Unless something really weird goes. So getting a chance to see him, maybe a chance to see Baez. What else? Who else are they bringing in? Do they bring in a young prospect from another team that you get to see play? Maybe they go ahead and bring up King Hintz just to see if something happens. I would be very surprised, but all that stuff. But I think we'll get a chance to see some new things. We're going to see some old things too. It's wouldn't be too surprising if Nolan Gorman makes a return, and I don't know that anybody's going to be excited about that. But it could be that way, and just see, especially if it looks like he's starting to figure something out at Memphis, which is, I have heard Kyle mentioned something. Alex Cole, the guy that does the broadcasting, has said he looks different. Some of the results are a little bit there, he's hitting a few more, but it's still getting back to what Nolan Gorman was, what Nolan Gorman wasn't a whole lot of excitement either, but at least it wasn't quite as miserable as what he was this year. So who knows? But I think we're going to get a lot of things, and we'll find that direction. You're right. If they trade somebody like Jimmy Crooks, we get an idea of what they're doing. If they trade a guy like Nootbaar or what they get back, we'll get a real clear idea of what they think this window looks like as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's we have the deadline, which is going to be movement, and then I'm going to add a couple roster spots to see how they do it, and it could be a fun 72 hours, honestly, just to see what happens with the Cardinals. And you're right. This one, I've always felt like the Toronto trip is just asking for trouble because it's not one that you make on the regular. You know what I mean? And I feel like they always play poorly when they do it. And then New York's fighting for their lives, so it could be rough. It could be a rough run here for a little while, but we may find out about what they are.
Yeah, and any games they win like that, the wins against the Yankees or the Dodgers or whoever the case may be, are just even that more impressive. I think just when they kind of have their hands tied behind their backs a little bit. So I don't know. We're gonna be interested to see. Before we get out though, last big, I guess the name that I have heard bandied about with some thought is that the Cardinals might try to trade Andre Palante. What do you think? Does that make sense?
So high? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's it. It would. That's one to me that I would be like, that's okay. I get it. The It stinks because I really like him, but are we going to see this year's or last year's, or is it going to be an every other year type situation that we see that he's really really good? Um, just as far as the competing day to day the rest of the season, just to help them on the long term. One, I hope they keep him, but two, I would like to see what the return would be because I think there's going to be people that want him, and that's whenever I didn't even know if you heard me say this when we were talking about Holiday of hey. None of these catchers are going to fit that model. Who they would trade? I said, well, what about Palante? And I don't think you heard me because
No,
I thought, well,
yeah.
I don't think he's the one that moves the needle on them, and they're not close enough to necessarily a playoff spot either to where that would be a move. But I do kind of wonder if that would be the jarring move of like, hey, you get two guys that can contribute next year if you could put Palante with somebody, which would really be intriguing to me.
Yeah, it could be. And they did send out Hunter Dobbins, so if they wanted to stretch things out, they didn't have a choice. But if they think they're going to trade Dustin May, they could have brought Dobbins up after the trade. So the fact that they brought up Quinn Mathews, or are bringing up Quinn Mathews, Dobbins has pitched well. So either means that they're going to go to a 6-man rotation throughout the rest of the way. Because I don't think. Either that or they're going to trade another pitcher and Dobbins can take that spot.
Yes,
I don't see Hunter Dobbins staying in the minor leagues past this weekend, assuming that there's a trade that can bring him back up. Before that, 10 days or whatever that is there. I think after this trade deadline, Hunter Dobbins is up to stay. That's my feeling.
Yeah. No, agreed. And I think that they like him in the rotation, and it's and you do kind of wonder. It's always, like I said, the air quotations. What would they be right now if Fitz was healthy or Roby was healthy, and
right.
One of those things which you really can't gamble on. But where would they be right now? Would that be the whole rotation? Because I think Dobbins is a part of that as well.
Yeah.
So I think that I wouldn't necessarily be an easy move, but it would make a lot of sense for him to be up, and I feel like that's a lot of the the Matthews. Now you can kind of earmark that to be the May potential, but you're probably right on. I think that just judging by the moves, I think that Palante will not be moved out, but I would not argue about it. And I think the return can be pretty good.
I said that. I think there's one other way Hunter Dobbins comes up, and that is if they make the move for Matthew Liberatore to go to the bullpen for the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And it feels like, I know they want to give, runway. They don't want people looking over their shoulder, all that kind of stuff. Matthew Liberatore has not been great in the rotation for a long time. And he's had success in the bullpen before. I don't know. And it, hey, you cushion it as innings and whatever if you want to. Although he's probably the most likely to be able to handle a full season. But I don't know. It feels, the Liberatore starts are really tough to deal with these days.
Yeah, and they don't seem to be getting better.
No.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I think that may be one of the more interesting plays that we see, that how things are handled in the next month and a half.
Yeah. All right. Well, this should be, again, an exciting weekend. And by the time we get back with you next week, the dust will have settled and we'll have a chance to talk not only about whatever trades are made, but what the team looks like going forward. But until then, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.
And yet we are not where we want to be. We are not where we need to be. We are not where our fans expect us to be. And we are not where we expect ourselves to be. Our goal is to field a team every year that can compete for this division and for a World Series championship.